Double female lead, Ravenclaw thread, containing Tivat paulownia, please watch at your discretion. 2 stars from a different world, for which the heavenly way has bestowed blessings. What exciting stories will the Northern Lights bring to the world of Harry Potter? How would Dumbledore treat this young girl from the East? Why is Lucius Malfoy quite wary of the background of young girls? Why is there a new director at Hogwarts? Hermione. Why did that guy get a 0 score on the flight test? Harry. The Aurora is super powerful. I just don't know why she always looks at me with that kind gaze. Ron. Aurora. It's better not to provoke her, Draco. Damn the red-eyed demon. Snape. It's best not to make any more deals with her mother. Luna. She saw the horned snoring beast. Blushing, and praised me for being beautiful. Aurora, eyes glowing. Golden-haired little girl. I want to masturbate. Chapter 1. Banquets. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Boss Ning, congratulations on winning another big order, said the middle-aged man who was a bit overweight. The woman who heard this smiled slightly and responded, no, it's just a small business. It's getting late, please forgive me. She finished drinking the wine in her hand and handed it to the staff. The lights at the banquet shone on the woman's white hair as if gilded, and the red tassels on her forehead highlighted her delicate features. After the condensation left, the banquet continued. At this moment, a man in a black suit walked towards the middle-aged man just now. Sir, what's the origin of Mr. Ning just now? The Chinese with a hint of British pronunciation caught the attention of those around him. Puhaha, where did you come from? You don't even know Boss Ning. Whose younger generation is this, ignorant and ignorant? I'm really laughing to death, there are still such people these days. The middle-aged man who had talked to Ning Guang wiped the physiological saline solution from his smile at the corner of his eye and said to the man in a suit, it's fortunate that you haven't been heard by Ning boss, otherwise your elders will suffer. The man in the suit looked embarrassed. Do you think this boss Ning has any big deal? Oh no, I'm laughing to death. Listen to your tone, you're a foreigner, right? Puff. It's still the kind of foreigner who hasn't seen the news. When everyone around him was almost laughing, the middle-aged man solemnly said to the man in a suit, listen up, foreigners. In China, no one knows the name of the heavenly power star Ningguang. This heavenly power star is the person who controls the entire economic lifeline of China. Even if you foreigners want to do business in China, it depends on the face of us Ningguang adults. The man in the suit nodded repeatedly, but won't Mr. Ning's great ability have any impact? When the people around heard this, none of them spoke, and the middle-aged man whispered beside him, they have some abilities on them. If there is a Dragon King by their side, even if something happens, it will be a disaster on the other side. The man in the suit couldn't figure it out and asked, who is this Dragon King? The middle-aged man sighed as he looked at the foreigner in a suit with many problems. You don't even read any news, kid. There is a same-sex lover in the Tianquan starlight, and this lover is not a petite and lovely vase. She is a woman who has opened up several sea trade routes for China. Her brothers on the ship respectfully call her the uncrowned Dragon King. The man in a suit's eyes darkened unconsciously when he heard about his same-sex partner, and even furrowed his eyebrows when he heard the following content. Can't help but ask, is China so open? This is a same-sex couple. The middle-aged man looked up and down at him impatiently and said, the young couple has done so much for China. What's wrong with dating? They still have an 11-year-old child. Speaking of this, the middle-aged man finally remembered and patted his head with regret. Oh my memory is broken. Today is Miss Bay's 11th birthday, no wonder Boss Ning left so early. With this in mind, the middle-aged man turned to the man in the suit and said, hey, who are your elders? Hey, where are people? Turning around, I found that the man in the suit had disappeared. In a room at the banquet, a man in a suit takes out a chopstick. He shouted to himself, "Restore," and the author made it up. The original man in a suit has transformed into an old grandfather with white hair and blue eyes. The old woman sitting on the sofa immediately got up. The serious-looking old woman said to the old man with white hair and blue eyes, "Albus, how are you?" The old man with white hair waved his hand and said, "Maliva, it seems that I need to conduct a home visit for that child." The old woman, known as Maliva, frowned seriously on her face. Indeed, this kind of wealthy family is the most difficult to believe in the existence of magic. Albus pushed off his glasses and took out the dessert that was served at the party from his pocket. "It's okay, Maliva, you go back first. Hogwarts still has a lot of documents to deal with," he said. Maliva looked sharply at the dessert in Albus's hand and said very seriously, "Who is the principal of Hogwarts?" Albus turned his head to escape the sharp gaze and said while eating, "Home visits. Today is the child's birthday, what gift should I bring?" Maliva. Chapter 2. Girls. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ding ding dong ding ding. The delicate and tender hands of the girl danced on the black and white piano. Listen, the beautiful melody flows at her fingertips, sometimes melodious and sometimes rhythmic. After playing the song, to Alice, the sunlight shone on the girl's white hair, and her wine-red eyes looked at the figure on the sofa. With a hint of helplessness in his eyes, he said, "Mom, quickly put down the wine. You've already had 2 bottles today. We will be scolded when our mother comes back later." "Nothing." The man on the sofa straightened up, with the same eyes as the girl, showing some drunkenness. "I'm the head of the family. Ning Guang, that woman can't control me." The girl thought to herself, if we could ignore your recent act of secretly putting the wine back, this statement would still have some credibility. Ding, the girl shouted loudly, "Here we are, please wait a moment. Slowly close the piano, then run to the door and open it. I'm back." The white-haired woman at the door made a hug gesture towards the girl. The young girl's wine-red eyes were coated with a layer of light. "Mother. Beidou, to be honest, after drinking a few bottles, that's how you take care of your children when I'm not here, right?" Ningguang hung her coat on the coat rack. Turning around, I saw that Beidou's eyes were blurred, condensing that aura. 5 bottles. As the girl walked around the sofa, she took the lead and said an outrageous answer, then walked to the kitchen and started cooking sobering soup. "Hiss, little Aurora, you're so fierce." Beidou looked at his wife who had already pinched his ear and shouted, "Be gentle, 2 bottles, only 2 bottles." Upon hearing this answer, Ningguang relaxed her strength and asked, "Really? Really, really, really? Woo-woo, my wife is so cruel." As soon as the ship arrived at the port, I immediately went home. "If you don't praise me, you still hit me." Beidou symbolically squeezed out a few tears, but slowly touched his hand along Ningguang's thigh. Pop. Ningguang vigorously patted off Beidou's salty pig hand and said, "My daughter is still here, what do you want?" Upon hearing this, Beidou's eyes lit up as he said, "It means that his daughter is not at home." The voice was loud, and Ningguang wished to block her mouth. Aurora had just brought out the sobering soup when he heard this sentence, and his mouth involuntarily twitched. "Hand the sobering soup to the 2 mothers and say, I'm also 11 years old. Should I choose a boarding high school?" Ningguang paused while drinking the sobering soup, then looked at Xiao Aurora and continued to drink the soup. And Beidou's hand, which was startled by his daughter's words, shook as he finished his drink and said, "Baby, Mom didn't mean to dislike you." Xiao Aurora and Ningguang saw the serious appearance of the Beidou and smiled at each other. "Puff, are you a fool?" Ding, just as Beidou and Ningguang were flirting, the doorbell rang again. Aurora put down the plate containing awakening wine soup and walked to open the door. Beidou and Ningguang's eyes also moved towards the door with the movement of Aurora. Click, "Hello, may I ask if Miss Aurora Borealis is there?" The Aurora looked at the old man with a white beard at the door and replied, "Hello sir, I am the Northern Aurora. May I ask if there is anything I can do?" The two people in the room couldn't sit still when they heard someone outside looking for the Aurora. "Hello sir, come in and talk." The person who came out to see the situation was Beidou, whose wine-red eyes were wary like a cheetah, staring at Albus Dumbledore. "Oh, dear, I'm not a bad person." Dumbledore tried to open his eyes wide to look very kind. "So, sir, are you here for my child?" Ningguang drank the tea brought out by Aurora and slowly asked. Dumbledore took the sweet dim sum given by the little Aurora and said with a smile. "Yes, lady, although it's a bit strange to say, your child, Miss Northern Aurora, has magic on her. If we don't accept the right guidance, there will be big things," Dumbledore said sincerely as he looked into his sparkling eyes, "so I hope you can invite Miss Aurora Borealis to study at Hogwarts." "That, sir. You can call me Aurora directly." Little Aurora sat next to him and whispered his opinion. Dumbledore chuckled and said, "I'm sorry dear, my Chinese is not very good." At this moment, Ningguang spoke, "I believe in the existence of magic, sir." Ningguang took another sip of tea and then looked at Dumbledore. "Can you talk to me in detail about Hogwarts?" "Let me introduce myself. My name is Albus Dumbledore." Chapter 3. Preliminary Understanding of the Magic World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Is it the magical world? Ningguang tapped on the armrest of the sofa with one hand, pondering alone. Finally, Beidou couldn't help but say, "This old man, do you think the school my child is going to is in England? Do you recruit people or go abroad?" The Beidou could no longer suppress their suspicion of Dumbledore. Dumbledore didn't get angry even after hearing this. His deep blue eyes looked at the Big Dipper and he said, "Believe me, Hogwarts welcomes little wizards from all over." Ningguang pulled the anxious Beidou and sat down. Looking at Beidou's restless expression, Ningguang let out a sigh and hit his forehead. "You're stupid, we can go with you. Where is learning? I can also expand my commercial city by going abroad." Beidou suddenly turned his head and said to Ningguang in shock, "It's Aurora. It's truly you, Ningguang." Ningguang covered his face with his hand and sighed, saying to Dumbledore, "We can agree, but it's up to the child's thoughts. If Aurora doesn't want to, we will do everything we can to solve the problem of the magical uprising you mentioned." The three of them focused their gaze on the small Aurora who was drifting away. "Hey, what are you looking at me for? We're finished chatting." Little Aurora watched as the fire poured over her and quickly sat upright. "Cough, mother, I don't mind. I also want to go see the magical world." Dumbledore's blue eyes finally showed a smile, and he turned to look at the window. "Our admission letter is also almost delivered. Because we need to cross the sea, the Aurora's notification letter is the only one sent out by the school 2 months in advance." Bang bang! Aurora heard this sound and turned its gaze to the window, as if something had flown by and collided with it. "Listen to this sound, it's a good idea. Go ahead, child." Dumbledore looked at her peacefully. Aurora looked at the two mothers and Ningguang nodded at her. Beidou is doubting its intelligence. When the Aurora opened the window, a brown owl flapped its wings and flew in. There is a slightly damp letter on its foot. The front of the letter was sealed with shield-shaped lacquer. In the center is a capital letter H, with lions, snakes, badgers, and eagles occupying the 4 corners of the lacquer. On the back, it was written in sky blue ink. Huaxia, the middle villa in the wealthy district, received by Miss Aurora Borealis. Aurora took down the letter and ran to sit between the two mothers. Originally, this owl wanted to peck at the Aurora to express dissatisfaction for not feeding itself. The Beidou, who was staring closely at his daughter, did not give it a chance. A fierce gaze scared the poor owl stiff. Returning to the mother's side, Aurora slowly opened the admission letter from the magical world. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Principal. Albus Dumbledore, President of the International Federation of Wizards, First-Class Magician of the Order of Merlin, Chief Magician of Wizengamot. Dear Miss Aurora Borealis, we are pleased to inform you that you have been admitted to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find attached a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st, and we will be waiting for your owl to bring you a reply before July 31st. Principal sincerely, Albus Dumbledore. The Aurora has been completely attracted by this letter filled with a sense of time. Keep looking at the content behind with two glowing eyes. First-year students at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, uniform, need to 1. 3 sets of plain work robes, black, 2. A plain pointed hat, black, worn during the day 3. A pair of protective gloves, made of dragon leather or similar materials, 4. A winter cloak, black with silver buckle. Please note that all student clothing must be adorned with a name tag. All students are required to prepare the following books. Standard Spell, Beginner, written by Miranda Goshak. History of Magic, written by Bashida al-Bashar. The Theory of Magic, by Adibi Wolflin. Beginner's Guide to Metamorphosis, by Emery Switch. 1,000 Wonderful Herbs and Tannins, by Philly Dassler. Magic Potions and Potions, by Asen Nigag. Fantastic Beasts and How to Find Them. Newt, The Power of Darkness. A Guide to Self-Protection, by Quentin Chambers. Aurora, who spoke good English, looked at these book titles with a bewildered expression, and looked up at the two mothers seeking help. Ningguang looked at little Aurora in confusion and smiled, touching her head and saying, "It's okay, baby. Principal Dumbledore is here. If you don't understand, you can ask." Aurora quickly walked up to Dumbledore and asked her own question, "Mr. Principal, where should I purchase these books?" Dumbledore swallowed the third sweet dim sum he ate and replied, "Don't worry, dear, we have a unified purchase channel, but it's in London. If you're in a hurry, I can use magic to take you there now." Just as Aurora wanted to agree, Ningguang spoke out. "Please wait a moment, sir. It's already late today, and we'll be celebrating this child's 11th birthday later. I'm not sure, could you please come back tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, sir?" Dumbledore looked at Ningguang and chuckled, "Of course, I'm sorry for taking up so much of your time. Also, happy birthday to little Aurora." After the Beidou bid farewell to Dumbledore, Ningguang remained silent for a rare moment. After pondering for a while, Ningguang looked up at the two wine-red eyes in front of him and smiled, "It seems we need to move." Beidou hugged Ningguang's waist and said, "Since we've decided, let's pack up tonight. Hiss, it hurts." Before he could finish speaking, he was picked up by Ningguang's ear. "Celebrate your daughter's birthday tonight first, let's talk about anything tomorrow." Speaking of which, Ningguang let go of someone's ear that had been pinched red by herself. "Take out the gift from the coat pocket on the coat rack." Ningguang placed the gift box in front of Xiao Aurora and said, "This is a birthday gift from your mother and me to you. Happy birthday, baby." Little Aurora excitedly opened the gift box, and upon seeing it was a golden purple bracelet with symbols of thunder and rock elements at the end. Please refer to the official flagship store's bracelet. Chapter 4. Diagon Alley. You are listening at novelfull.audio. "Ningguang, have you packed your things?" Beidou said to Ningguang with his suitcase in hand. "I've seen the houses in London quite a bit. I'll wait for the principal to take us to a specific place." Beidou rubbed his hands excitedly and said, "I'm very curious. What kind of transportation will the old man use to take us over? Airplane? Steamship? I'm really looking forward to it." Ningguang put on her accessories and looked at Beidou helplessly, saying, "Even though you're sending your daughter to school, you're getting excited." After Ningguang finished speaking, he turned around and tied the purple circular ornament on the table to Beidou's waist, saying, "With the eyes of God, London, England is not as peaceful as China. Aurora, are you ready?" Ningguang shouted into the room. After tying the thunder god's eye, Aurora walked out of the room carrying a violin bag, with a sky blue circular necklace hanging around her neck. There is a snowflake symbol in the center of the necklace. Without a doubt, this is the eye of the ice god. Mother, I'm ready. Aurora lifted her bag and smiled at the two mothers in front of the light. Ningguang touched little Aurora's head and opened the door. The old man with white hair outside was waiting for a long time while eating small desserts. Beidou greeted Dumbledore and said, "Grandpa, please." Dumbledore finished the sweet dim sum, smiled, nodded and replied, "Son, this is what I should do. Don't thank me." After speaking, waved to the Aurora family of 3. "Come, stand by my side." Dumbledore took out his wand. "Now is the moment to witness miracles. Disapparition, oh, phew, I'll be in London in no time." Beidou was shocked by this long-distance space magic. Ningguang lowered his head and pondered what effect this magic would have on war. And Aurora is still working hard to alleviate the vomiting sensation caused by phantom shift. Dumbledore looked at the shimmering pupils, his deep blue eyes flickering for a moment, and inadvertently muttered. This long-distance teleportation requires massive magic to support it, and currently only 3 people in the world can achieve it. Cough, let's go, Principal Dumbledore. Ningguang coughed in disguise. Dumbledore smiled as if thinking of something and asked, "Miss Ningguang, have you changed the currency?" "Of course, the UK also has some of my assets." Ningguang looked up slightly. "We are planning to buy all the necessary documents and live in the UK for a period of time." Dumbledore touched his beard and smiled, that's really a good idea." Following Dumbledore's footsteps, the Aurora and the others arrived at a very ordinary street. However, there is actually a run-down shop on this street. It appears particularly abrupt on this ordinary and tidy street. However, the crowds of people who came and went seemed to overlook it as if they had not seen it. Ningguang and Beidou exchanged a glance and continued to follow Dumbledore. I saw Dumbledore walking towards the Broken Cauldron Bar. A small and dirty bar, this is the first idea of Aurora after entering. Inside, it was dim and dilapidated, with several old women sitting in a corner drinking, and a few scattered people chatting with the bartender. "Oh. Merlin's beard, look who's here." The old bartender looked at Dumbledore and said in surprise. Then I saw the white-haired Aurora behind Dumbledore. The old bartender finally came to his senses and said, "Oh, it's another school season." Dumbledore smiled at the old bartender and said, "That's right, Tom. I have to take this child to Diagon Alley to buy something." Dumbledore looked at the Aurora family and said, "Now see how I did it." Dumbledore came to the garbage dump and said, "Look clearly, Aurora. The garbage dump is 3 blocks up and 3 blocks sideways." He tapped the wall 3 times with his wand. The bricks in front of him began to vibrate, and the middle part shook violently. A hole began to grow larger and larger, and finally a huge arch appeared in front of the Aurora trio. Behind the arch, one could vaguely see the wizard in a black robe and pointed hat walking. "Welcome to Diagon Alley," said Dumbledore. Years of education from Aurora made her suppress her expression of amazement. Beidou lowered his arm to protect Ningguang and took a step forward towards Diagon Alley. Watching Beidou walk towards the arch, Ningguang leads Aurora into the arch. Aurora quickly turns its head and sees that the arch behind it has turned back into a wall. The sunshine shines on the shops in Diagon Alley, Quidditch boutique store, lichen bookstore, magical animal store. Dumbledore saw the Aurora and said, "If you want to buy something, I suggest going to Gringotts Bank first to exchange pounds for cologne. 1 gallon is equal to 17 sequos or 493 nats, and it is made of gold." At this moment, Ningguang's interest was completely aroused. Dumbledore pointed to the towering white building in Diagon Alley. As they approached, they saw a fairy guard standing at the door in a crimson gold uniform, bowing to them. After entering, Ningguang frowned tightly and slowly read the text engraved on the door. "Please come in, stranger, but be careful. What will happen to insatiable greed? Just take, get for nothing, I will definitely receive the harshest punishment, so if you want to take a piece of wealth from our underground vault that never belonged to you, thief, you have been warned, be careful not to attract treasure, but to seek retribution. After reading these, Ningguang curled her lips and whispered, interestingly, I have developed a strong interest in finance in the magical world now. Beidou remained silent as soon as they entered Diagon Alley, quietly protecting the aurora and condensation light along the way. A fairy walked up to Dumbledore and flattered, Mr. Dumbledore, how much Garon do you want? Dumbledore shook his hand and said, it's not me. Please exchange some Garon for Miss Ningguang. Ningguang walked towards the fairy and asked, may I ask what is the exchange rate between Cologne and the pound? The fairy changed her flattery towards Dumbledore and said impatiently. Oh my God, it's another muggle. Listen, 1 gallon is equivalent to 5 pounds, and there are no restrictions on muggle currency exchange. Ningguang pressed down on Beidou's tightly clenched fist and patiently said, okay, can we exchange it for 5 million Garon? Oh, 5 million gold coins. Do you want to exchange that useless muggle currency? The fairy sneered disdainfully. So, how about exchanging gold? Upon hearing these words, the fairy immediately bowed to Ningguang and excitedly said, of course. Pixiv is willing to serve this beautiful lady. Then, in a sharp voice, he said to the surrounding fairies, quickly gather 5 million crowns and take them from the vault. This is a big client. He. After changing the currency, Ningguang said to Beidou, take Aurora to buy a wand first, and Mr. Dumbledore and I will wait for you at the Lichen bookstore. After the Beidou and the others left, Ningguang and Dumbledore walked towards the bookstore. Mr. Dumbledore, you said before that Hogwarts has a board of directors, so can the group of Jade Towers invest? Ningguang asked Dumbledore in a friendly tone, although he said it was a question, he spoke in a positive tone. Dumbledore wiped his glasses and looked at the spotlight, saying, this is not easy. I think I will make those shareholders relax. Chapter 5. Wand. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Aurora took Beidou's hand, shook it, and asked, Mom, why aren't you talking? Beidou looked around and whispered, my English level is limited. Watching you speak fluent English makes my head ache. Beidou said, alright, let's go to the wand shop with Aurora. Ningguang will buy good books in the bookstore. Speaking of the wand, little Aurora looked up at a very narrow store. The peeling golden letter on the door reads. Ollivander Wand Shop. When the Aurora walked in, it was found to be a very small place with nothing but a chair. Looking up, I saw thousands or even hundreds of narrow boxes almost reaching the ceiling. Good morning, a soft voice said. Who? Beidou's hands were adorned with thunder elements, standing horizontally in front of the Aurora. An old man stood in front of them, his large and blue eyes shining through the dim light of the small window. Oh, I have no ill intentions. The old man said apologetically, Garrick Ollivander, this is the wand shop run by Ollivander, and every little wizard can get a satisfactory wand from me. The Beidou lowered its arm, but this does not mean it has lowered its vigilance. Ollivander looked at Beidou's hands in surprise and said, oh, Merlin's pants, incredible thunder magic. After speaking, he shook his head. He took out a long ruler with a silver mark. All right, child, let me take a look, said to the Aurora, which hand are you holding the wand with? Well, sir, I use my right hand, Aurora replied. Ollivander used that ruler to measure the entire body of Aurora. When the ruler touched the pendant around Aurora's neck, cold air surged towards the surroundings. Upon seeing this, Ollivander withdrew his ruler and said, incredible coldness, I think that wand should be suitable for you. Oh yes, that's right, Ollivander said as he walked towards the door. Child, please wait a moment. Remember, it's the wand that selects the person. Not long after, I saw Ollivander take out a box tightly wrapped in cloth. As he opened it, he said, oh, walnut, 12 1/4 inches, made from a unique cold dragon nerve of the Arctic. There is a strong ice attribute covering, and the little wizard cannot control it at all. Ollivander looked up and stared blankly at the Aurora, saying, "Strong ice, I don't think anyone is more suitable than you." Aurora looked at the wand that revealed its true face and reached out to grab it. I saw the eye of the ice god on Aurora's neck shining, and a cold current surged towards the wand. Snowflake, a pure white snowflake emerged from one end of the wand, like joy or mischief. Ollivander shouted, "That's right. That's it. It's amazing. It's just amazing." Beta glanced at the excited Ollivander and muttered softly, "This thing is not as good as the Eye of God." Aurora put the wand into the small bag that Beidou's mother carried with her. After completing the payment in Cologne, one big and one small walked towards the lichen bookstore. Puff. The Savior. Deceiving. Children. Politicians. Please forgive me. As the Aurora pushed open the door of the bookstore, the conversation also disappeared. The Aurora walked towards the condor and said, "Mother's wand is ready." Ningguang pinched little Aurora's face and said with a smile, "I've already bought the book I wanted in first grade. What else haven't I bought?" Aurora opened the list and compared it, saying, Animal. "Mother, I need to buy an owl to deliver the message." At this moment, Beidou touched the little head of Aurora and said, "Hey, don't worry, I think my gift can also come and deliver a letter." The Aurora stared foolishly at the Beidou. Beidou pointed to the pendant on Aurora's wrist and said, "The bracelet is a birthday gift from your mother, and the birthday gift I gave you is not worse than this." Dumbledore also said, "Aurora, please forgive an old man who didn't prepare a birthday gift for you yesterday. After going back, I think you should really like this." After speaking, Dumbledore took out a cage from his large robe. Inside is a puppet cat with sky blue eyes and natural red eyeliner at the end of the eyes. Meow, the delicate meow of the cat immediately penetrated into the heart of the Aurora. The Aurora suppressed excitement and looked at Dumbledore, saying, "Principal Dumbledore, is this for me?" "Of course, child, please forgive this late birthday gift," said Dumbledore. Beidou and Ningguang naturally have no objections. Aurora opened the cage and gently hugged the cat, revealing a sunny smile to Dumbledore. "Thank you, Mr. Principal. I really like it," he said when Dumbledore sent the Aurora family back to their villa. He handed Aurora an envelope. "This is a ticket to Hogwarts, September 1st, King's Cross Station is all written on your train ticket. Goodbye Aurora and have a pleasant summer vacation." Chapter 6. King's Cross Station. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the last month of summer vacation, the Aurora was not idle either. Retrieve the magic history book from the condensation light and start learning magic knowledge. Each textbook purchased has obvious traces of flipping through. There are scattered magical materials on the table, and Therese is sleeping on the bed. Aurora gave the puppet cat a name, and Therese is a girl. There is a bird rack next to the bedside, on which is a pure white jade claw of Hai Dong Qing. This is a birthday gift from Beidou. Aurora is called Haidongking, and Haidongking is also a girl. The god of time starts working on September 1st. Beidou and Ningguang arrived at the train station with Aurora just 2 hours before driving. 9 and 3/4 of the platform. Aurora reads the information on the train ticket. Beidou looked around and said, "I haven't seen such a station either." Ningguang pondered for a moment and looked at the railings and ticket gates around the platform. "Perhaps we should use magic to solve this problem." After speaking, he pulled the Beidou and Aurora towards the middle of the 9th and 10th platforms. "Do you feel it? There's something wrong here, take a look with an elemental perspective." Beidou listened to Ningguang's words and touched the space there without any problem. After attaching thunder elements to both hands, the space begins to fluctuate. "I've passed through," Aurora said in surprise. "I saw Beidou's hand pass through the platform, and then the whole person passed by." After a glance at each other, the Aurora and the condensed light also followed suit, but the Aurora could pass directly. Condensation requires the attachment of rock elements to enter. Aurora opened its eyes and saw a deep red steam locomotive parked next to the platform. The sign on the train reads, Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. It seems we found the right place, Ningguang sighed slightly and smiled. Due to the earlier time, a few scattered crowds walked around. Some curious students looked at the two cages next to Aurora, Terith and Haedonking. Ningguang looked at the Aurora and said, now your adventure has begun. After tidying up the collar of the Aurora and learning from the tone of the Beidou, he said, don't be afraid of causing trouble. Someone will bully you and use the eye of God. Or a wand to fight back. Beidou looked at the woman helplessly and turned to Aurora, saying, choose a larger private room when you get on the train. Ningguang also agreed, we also need to make more friends. Aurora listened to the caring words of its mothers and nodded obediently. Beidou looked up and saw a touch of gold in the distance, as if thinking of something. With a wicked smile on his lips, he walked towards the distance. Oh Mr. Malfoy, long time no see. Lucius Malfoy was talking to his son when he suddenly heard this familiar and unfamiliar whisper. Lucius quickly turned his head, trying to control his twisted expression. Is there anything else, Ms. Beidou? I think the Malfoy family has already approved the application for Chuanyuji's shareholding during the shareholders' meeting. Lucius's son Draco nervously tugged at his mother's hem and looked wide at the devil who had been visiting their house for several weeks. Beidou smiled and said, didn't I see you guys coming over to say hello? Then he looked at Draco and said, oh little devil, Hogwarts has asked my daughter to take care of you. At this moment, the condensed light also brought the Aurora over. Draco turned his gaze to the Aurora as big as him. White hair with a slight gradient of reddish-brown at the tail. Devil-like eyes. Seeing the Aurora's wine-red eyes, Draco immediately hid behind his mother and muttered softly. Aurora looked at the timid Draco, then glanced at his watch and gently tugged at the sleeve of the condensed light. Mother, it's almost time. Can I get on the car first? Aurora handed the watch to Ningguang to look at. Ningguang touched little Aurora's head and said, go ahead and make more friends. Aurora nodded perfunctorily and thought to herself, social anxiety individuals never take the initiative to make friends. That's right, our Aurora is a mild form of social anxiety. If the mothers are by their side, it's okay, but if they are alone, it immediately becomes cold and high. Those intimidating wine-red eyes refused countless people who wanted to approach and chat. Ningguang and Beidou are also aware of the small flaw of Aurora. Aurora nodded to the two mothers and pushed the suitcase onto the train alone. There is still over an hour before the train departs, and Aurora found a relatively large empty carriage at the head of the train. After placing the luggage, the divine eye on Aurora's neck lit up. Extremely cold, Aurora said expressionlessly. The whole private room was surrounded by cold air, and the students who had just thought of coming to this private room immediately retreated when the cold air froze. Some are not giving up and still want to continue moving forward. But in the end, I couldn't bear the cold and silently retreated. Over time, no one came to this private room. The Aurora in the private room watched as the two mothers walked out of the station, took out their books, and continued their studies. Bang pa dong, amidst the noise, Aurora withdrew from its learning mode and pressed its temples with its fingers. She looked at her watch and it was already 10:52. Looking up again at the outside of the car, I noticed a significant increase in foot traffic. What does it have to do with me? Aurora propped her head up with her hands, thinking bored. Bang bang, hello, is there anyone inside? A boy with broken glasses stood at the door of the box where Aurora was located and said, "Can I come in because the back carriages are full?" Aurora looked at him in surprise and said, "Of course, sir, please come in." The glassy boy gave her a shy smile and nervously said, "You can call me Harry." After putting his luggage in and arranging it, Harry looked at her anxiously. After feeling curious about his ability to break through his cold, Aurora nodded to him and continued reading. Harry saw his classmates so eager to learn, so he took out a book to read. This private room exudes a harmonious learning atmosphere. But after a while, the door of the private room opened again and a brown-haired girl entered. That pair of front teeth is a bit damaging to the beauty. Aurora silently roasted in her heart. Hey, hello, can I sit down? Of course, Aurora said to shy Harry. Oh, that's really great. I used to have a place to sit. As soon as I sat down, I heard that there was a private compartment in the front of the car emitting air conditioning, and many people dared not approach. The little girl's tone was not only fast, but also filled with the aura of no one in her eyes. Oh, of course, I don't believe it. Just look at me and I can get close. Aurora silently glanced at its watch, it was already 10:57. The divine eye flickered and removed the cold air around it. When the little girl packed her luggage and sat directly next to the Aurora, she looked at the book in her hand and said, "Are you learning spells?" "Oh, I tried a few simple spells at home just to practice, and they all worked. No one in my family knows magic, so when I received the admission letter, I was extremely surprised, but also very happy. What I mean is, as far as I know, this is the best magic school, and I have memorized all the textbooks. Of course, I just hope this is enough. My name is Hermione Granger. May I ask what your names are?" She speaks like a machine gun, and as soon as she fires, it's a series of English words. "Northern Lights, Chinese people," Aurora sighed and said. Aurora thought to herself, I seem to have caused a problem. Sure enough, Hermione became even more excited when she heard of the Aurora. He said, "Huaxia. I never knew that Hogwarts used to accept people from other countries. Oh Merlin's beard. What's China like? How did you get to London? Can you understand the spell above? Do you need me to teach you? Is there anyone else in China who knows magic?" After listening to Hermione's words, Aurora only felt a headache. "Help Mom, I don't want to socialize." At this moment, Harry weakly said, "My name is Harry Potter." "Okay, Miss Hermione is starting again." "Is it really you?" Hermione asked. "I know everything about you, of course I bought a few extra reference books. You are mentioned in books such as Modern Magic History, The Rise and Fall of Black Magic, and Important Magic Events of the 20th Century. Speaking of me," Harry said in shock. Aurora continued to read, with the chatter of two children in its ears. Aurora didn't look for a while before putting down her book, and she felt that someone was coming in again. "Hello, are there any seats available here?" the child with fiery red hair asked. Of course, this is Harry's voice. "I think he can't wait to get rid of this problem, Miss Duo. Aurora used a book to slightly conceal the corners of its mouth that caused trouble and disaster. While Ron, Hermione, and Harry Potter were chatting, there was a loud noise coming from the hallway. A woman with a smiling face and dimples pushed open the door and asked, "Darling, do you want to buy any food from the car?" Aurora symbolically bought 2 snacks from the magical world, and when she turned to take out her lunch, she found that Harry had bought all the snacks on the shelf like a scapegoat. Harry happily shared his snacks with everyone. Aurora looked at Ron's flushed faces and lowered its gaze to open its lunch. This is the mora meat and stir-fried meat slices personally cooked by Ningguang in Beidou, with a very large appetite. Aurora looked at 3 classmates who had already been attracted by the fragrance and smiled, "You can come and eat together." Skipping the time for cooking. God of Time says, as the excited hearts of the young girls were gradually diluted, the topic of discussion shifted to what college they wanted to go to. "I don't know which school I will be assigned to, I have already inquired everywhere. I hope to be assigned to Gryffindor, and everyone says it's the best. I heard Dumbledore graduated from there, but I don't think Ravenclaw is too bad either," Hermione said. "I hope to go to Gryffindor, please don't assign me to Slytherin College," Ron said. "Why? Harry said. Ron said vaguely, the subordinates of that mysterious person all come from Slytherin. Oh, anyway, Slytherin's people are not good people. Hermione nodded in fear as she looked at the Aurora and asked, "What about you, Aurora?" The Aurora removed its reading glasses and revealed its wine-red eyes. Aurora handed the book he had just read to the three little ones and said, "Look at this. The greatest wizard in history, Merlin himself, is a Slytherin. His knowledge comes from Slytherin's teachings." So, Aurora stared at San Shao and said, "There is a reason for the existence of all things in the world, and we cannot deny it. Slytherin has an extremely excellent existence. This great achievement cannot be erased by any means." Harry nodded in confusion. Ron didn't take it seriously. Hermione is slightly less afraid. Aurora looked at the time and then at the scenery outside the car. The sky has already darkened, and under the deep purple sky, mountains and forests seemed to slow down the train. By the time the four people changed their robes, the train had already stopped. First-year students. First-year students, come here. Harry, come here. Aurora now realizes that the magical world is truly magical. She sighed as she looked at Hagrid, who was taller than two Beidou mothers. The four little ones were the first to board the small boat crossing the river under Hagrid's guidance. Accompanied by Hagrid's shout and the gentle breeze on the sea, small boats sailed towards the castle in the center of the lake. The destination arrived, and students disembarked one after another. Hagrid found a toad while inspecting the empty ship and handed it to the boy who was crying. It seems to be named Neville. In the end, everyone gathered in front of a huge oak door. At this moment, the Aurora couldn't contain its excitement. "I'm here, Hogwarts Magic World." Chapter 7. Branch Hat. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The door opened, and Maliva, who was talking to Dumbledore in the banquet room, stood at the door. Her expression remained so serious, and the little wizard who met her gaze unconsciously shrank his neck. Maliva McGonagall is a professor of deformation courses and also the vice president of Hogwarts. Aurora has read her paper on the Metamorphosis Curse. To be honest, she can't understand. "I don't understand its principles, but reading such a professional paper can lead to accidents," Ningguang said to her daughter. After the Aurora regained its senses, it followed the army into the hall of Hogwarts. The children followed Professor McGonagall through a section of the floor covered in colorful flags. Aurora's mood was a bit bad, with hundreds or thousands of noisy voices surrounding her ears. The hall is astonishingly large, at least able to accommodate all the students in the school. Professor McGonagall took the freshmen to a small empty room far from the hall. She said, "Welcome to Hogwarts." After a pause, he continued, "Before the start of the school banquet, you will be assigned to your respective colleges. Dividing schools is also very important. Hogwarts has 4 colleges, namely Gryffindor, Hirchpack, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin. Every student is proud of their college. Each college has trained talented wizards. Observing discipline will earn points, while violating rules will result in points being deducted. The college with the highest score at the end of each year will be awarded the supreme honor. The College Cup. I hope you can bring glory to your college." After saying some precautions, Professor McGonagall left. "What criteria will they assign us to different colleges based on?" Harry asked Ron. "Listening to my brother, it seems like fighting against a giant monster." Ron nervously swallowed his saliva. Hermione tugged at Aurora's hem and said anxiously, "Although I have memorized the text, I haven't tried it in practice yet. They won't come up with any overarching questions, will they? If they don't pass, they won't be fired, will they?" The Aurora withdrew its gaze from Professor McGonagall's gaze after he left. "The book says Professor McGonagall's animagus is a tabby cat. It's a humanoid cat. I don't know who is better at sucking than Therese." Aurora murmured softly. She only regained consciousness when Hermione pulled her. Aurora looked at Hermione's trembling hand nervously, glanced over and pulled back his sleeve, saying, "There are little wizards from all over the world here. If we only value grades, then this school should be like that." After listening to the Aurora, Hermione felt a little relieved. "It's too early to rest assured. I saw about 20 ghosts floating in the room, with semi-transparent bodies, talking as they floated. Oh, look at their timidity." A chubby old woman's ghost said to the frightened new student, "Don't be afraid of the child. Wishing you a hitch patch, you know. That's where I graduated." The Aurora opened its divine eye when the ghost flew in, surrounded by cold air. Hermione clearly felt the unusual cold and looked at her with glowing eyes, saying, "I knew you made those air conditioners in the carriage." Professor McGonagall returned and said, "Stand in line, come with me now." Aurora regained its chill and kept up with the team without changing its expression. Hermione tried to hold on to her hem behind her, but was accidentally broken free by Aurora. Harry looked up at the black ceiling adorned with stars in the hall. Hermione walked up to his ear and muttered, "I saw it in A History of Hogwarts that someone had enchanted it to make it look more like the starry sky outside." Aurora turned its gaze back to Professor McGonagall, who was pondering where to start if she wanted to suck cats. The sudden crying and howling of ghosts and wolves pulled the Aurora's thinking back. This is the sound made by Professor McGonagall's hat placed on the corner stool singing. Oh, it's truly magic. Even hats can talk, but how do you feel like these hats are a bit dirty? McGonagall started calling out his name after singing the song on the Sorting Hat. Hannah Abbott. Aurora is boring, but good upbringing makes her look ahead expressionless. Hermione Granger. It's Hermione's turn. She ran up and put on her hat. Sit obediently on the stool. Oh, miss, you have the courage of Gryffindor. Going there will bring you exciting adventures and reliable friends. And Ravenclaw's wisdom will take you further. Where do you want to go? The Sorting Hat kindly said to Hermione. Hermione looked at her friends and was very conflicted. Oh, it seems there's already an answer, so, Gryffindor, the hat shouted loudly. Hermione ran to Gryffindor's long table, sat down, and looked at the white-haired Aurora in the crowd, reading a book. Because it's too boring, it's better to read a book. Aurora, Draco Malfoy, the blonde boy proudly walked forward and before his hat touched him, he screamed, "Slytherin." Draco looked arrogantly at all the little wizards in the crowd, but immediately shuddered when he saw those wine-red eyes. There are few new students left on stage now, and the white-haired Aurora, who is reading a book, stands out particularly among the restless little wizard. Harry Potter. What, Harry Potter? Is it that Harry Potter? Harry walked forward, but the sound of speaking from the audience was like a frying pan. Even Dumbledore, who had just been paying attention to the Aurora, turned his head to look at Harry. During these long minutes, everyone was eagerly anticipating, and in the end, the Sorting Hat shouted, "Gryffindor." Oh! We have a porter now. The fiery red twins were shouting in unison. Ron also safely entered Gryffindor. In the end, there's only one left, Aurora North. The unfamiliar tone came from Professor McGonagall's mouth. Aurora looked up and walked towards the branch hat with one hand holding the book under his armpit. Oh my goodness, Ravenclaw's wisdom, Hessapatch's spirit, and a little bit of Slytherin's ambition. Strange, don't you want to go to Gryffindor? The hat was puzzled, you don't seem to have much adventurous spirit. Aurora sat on a four-cornered stool and opened the book she had just brought. As he watched, he replied, Hitchcock was not surprised at all. Slytherin's ambition was probably inherited from my mother, but let Gryffindor go. I don't like to do things that are uncertain. That style of being reckless if I can't stand it doesn't suit me. Just like this, one person, one hat, one question, one answer. After 5 minutes, Aurora looked at his watch and said, That's it. Mr. Hatter and you had a great chat, but I'm hungry. Aurora closed the book and stood up, shouting, Ravenclaw. Then slowly walked towards Ravenclaw's long table. The Sorting Hat was disturbed by the Aurora's operation and shouted slowly, Ravenclaw. Some professors looked at the distinctive Aurora with their mouths raised. Especially Professor Flavia, the Dean of Ravenclaw, had already bent over with a smile. Ron said to Harry, "She's really cool." Hermione, upon hearing this, retorted, "She shouldn't be like this. She's too radical, can't she just finish speaking with the Sorting Hat? What if the Sorting Hat dismisses her?" Ron stood a little further away from Hermione and muttered softly, "Merlin's red high heels, why did she come to Gryffindor?" Dumbledore stood up and stared at the students below, opening his arms and saying, "Welcome to Hogwarts, idiot." Cry. Residues. Twist. After seeing the Aurora coming down, Ravenclaw's students began to circle around her. Autumn Zhang, a sophomore, greeted Aurora in fluent Mandarin. "Hello, your name sounds a bit familiar to me. Have I heard it somewhere before?" Aurora turned to look at her and said calmly in Mandarin, "My mother Ningguang, you should have seen some news about me." "It's true, my goodness, I'm so close to my idol's daughter," said Autumn Zhang, covering up her shocked mouth with her hand just as Autumn Zhang wanted to ask Aurora for more information. Penelope Crivet, the female prefect of Ravenclaw, spoke up. "All right, Eagles, let Aurora have a dinner first. We know you're curious, but there's plenty of opportunities to ask later." As the prefect's words fell, the plates in front of Aurora were also filled with food. Surprisingly, the food in front of the Aurora is Chinese cuisine. Aurora looked at the professor's podium, and Principal Dumbledore raised his glass and blinked at her. After Ravenclaw's eagle finished their meal, Penelow's voice appeared. "It's time for Ravenclaw's QA, please ask the first-grade Eagles to think about what Principal Dumbledore meant by stupid, crying, scumbag, twisted, just now. Do you cry when you encounter a fool? Can't leave any residue when eating?" After finishing the meal, the little eagle was full of energy, discussing problems with all his mouth and tongue. Penelope looked at Aurora, who was chatting with Autumn after dinner, and said, "What about you?" "Aurora." Aurora froze and pondered for a moment before speaking. These 4 words should correspond to each of the 4 colleges. Penelope didn't expect her to get to the point and gestured with a praising gaze to continue speaking. Aurora said, "I think this should be considered a humorous mockery. Fools are easy to understand. Ravenclaw values wisdom. So for those who haven't entered Ravenclaw, they are relatively stupid. Gryffindor symbolizes courage. Relatively speaking, those who haven't entered Gryffindor are crying. The residue should be relative to Slytherin College. And the twist should be compared to the Hufflepuff." The people around applauded in unison. Penelope looked at the Aurora and praised, "It's really impressive, that's roughly what it means." "Probably." Aurora looked at her puzzled. Penelope shrugged helplessly and said, "This could also be just a casual remark from Professor Dumbledore." "That's right, but it's undeniable that you explained it well," said a light and ethereal voice. "This is Mrs. Grey, the ghost of Ravenclaw," Penelope explained as she looked at the Aurora's guarded appearance. Ms. Grey elegantly bowed to the Aurora and said, "Your answer is very good." Aurora lowered its guard and nodded in tribute to her, saying, "Thank you." After returning the gift, I saw Ms. Grey proudly drifting away. After Dumbledore finished talking about the precautions, there was actually a singing section. Undoubtedly, while singing, the entire Hogwarts is filled with ghostly cries and wolf howls, both fast and slow. Only the Aurora stands like a pine tree, hands lightly placed on the dantian, and begins rhythmic recitation in languages from different countries. After singing this song, Ravenclaw's first-grade students have been impressed by the Aurora. The Aurora is completely unaware. After a long climb of stairs, Ravenclaw's eagles finally arrived at the entrance of Ravenclaw's lounge. Penelope explained to the freshmen, the Ravenclaw lounge does not require a password like the other 3 colleges. You only need to answer the questions posed by the doorbell, and if you answer them reasonably, you can clear the level. If you have any questions, you can also ask about the door knocker, and we welcome all eagles to update their questions in a timely manner. Penelo walked towards the eagle-shaped door knocker. The doorknob asked, which is more dangerous, curiosity or vanity? Penelo replied, not having enough strength. Both curiosity and vanity are dangerous. It makes sense. The doorknob opened. Penelope walked in with the young wizards and said, Ravenclaw rested at the highest point of Hogwarts. As soon as the Aurora stepped into the lounge, it began to silently observe. It has to be said that the lounge in Ravenclaw is very pleasing to the eye, and located at the highest point, it can see the beautiful scenery outside from the window. The ceiling is adorned with stars, and there are also stars on the deep blue carpet below. In the niche opposite the door, there is a half-white marble statue of Rowena Ravenclaw. The door next to the statue leads to the dormitory above. Penelope looked at the freshman and said solemnly, Welcome to Ravenclaw College. Our coat of arms is an eagle. Soaring in the sky, at the pinnacle that no one can reach. We have a sharp mind, we are wise and knowledgeable. Please remember that exceptional intelligence is the greatest wealth of humanity. The first grade schedule is all on their respective bedside tables, so don't be late for tomorrow's class. Let's go rest now. Penelo looked at Aurora and said, Sorry Aurora, due to the number of people, you should be in one room per person. The house elves have already delivered your luggage. Wishing you a good dream, clever little eagle. It was already 10 p.m. when Aurora packed their luggage. She called Hai Dongqing and tied the just-written letter to his lap. Touching Hai Dongqing's head, he said to it, Go ahead and deliver the letter to your mother. They must be in a hurry. Hai Dongqing rubbed his head against the back of Aurora's hand and flew away from the window of the room. Aurora looked at Hai Dongqing who had gone far away, turned off the bedside light, and climbed onto the sky-blue bed with Therese in her arms. Touching Therese's plush head, she slowly closed her eyes and said, Good night, Mom. Meow. Chapter 8. The Conspiracy of Mothers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Click. Beidou opened the window of the villa and let Hai Dongqing in. Untie the letter on Hai Dongqing's leg and walk towards the condensation light on the sofa. Beidou handed the letter to Ningguang and said, In the magical world, it's just an old antique. You can't even use a phone, and you still have to use such a primitive way of delivering messages. Ningguang held a letter in one hand and continued to play with the palm of Beidou in the other. Ningguang said, Who knows? After reading the letter, the condensed light played back the hand on Beidou, stood up, and walked towards the study. Then Ningguang brought out a bunch of middle and high school textbooks. To Beidou who was reading the letter, he said, Tell Hai Dongqing to bring these over later. Aurora needs to learn. Beidou nodded symbolically and looked at Ningguang in confusion, asking, Why must Aurora go to Hogwarts to learn? She has never left us since birth, is it a bit hasty? Ningguang shook her head and explained to her, It is precisely because Aurora has never left us that she needs and must go and see the outside world. We can protect her for a lifetime, but Aurora will not be willing to. Ningguang looked out the window and said, Aurora is very smart. She has already seen what she lacks, and she also said it before going to Hogwarts. Mother, after passing the test of the Eye of God, I feel my emotions being suppressed by the cold. If I don't guide it, I'm afraid one day I'll become a monster without any emotions or desires. But Hogwarts is here, this is an opportunity for Mother. I want to go, I must go, I want to gain the power to control it. The little Aurora in the memory said to Ningguang. Beidou lowered his eyes and looked at the floor in silence. Ningguang sat next to her and comforted, It's okay, Aurora is very strong and can definitely grasp this power. Beidou Meng looked up at Ningguang and complained, Why, my daughter whispered to you instead of me. Little Aurora doesn't love her mother anymore. You went to deal with those stubborn pure-blood wizards at that time, he said as he struck the Beidou's head with a hand knife, condensing his aura. Aurora doesn't tell me who to talk to, Hai Dongqing. Beidou was really angry when he saw Ningguang, so he immediately hugged her and coaxed, "The conversation was right, I was confused." Then he abruptly changed the topic and said, "Ah, that's right, I don't know if anyone has been bullied in Aurora's school." Ningguang glanced at her and said, "It's okay, I believe the Aurora can adapt." After pondering for a moment, he slowly said, "I'm a bit worried that Dumbledore will take my child to hone that savior. The savior. That's the one you talked to the old man in the bookstore?" asked Beidou in confusion. Ningguang nodded disdainfully and said, "I really don't know what's going on with the adult wizard over there, entrusting his fate to an underage child. What Dumbledore said about the savior, fooling fools, is possible, but it doesn't confuse me as a politician. Bring your child around without shaping their values well, brainwash them all day, and use them when they are suitable." "That's really a good trick," Ningguang said. "It's so scary, that's why I don't think about these twists and turns," said Beidou. "But," Ningguang looked up at the ceiling, "at least Dumbledore took care of our Aurora so well." Ningguang patted Beidou's hands on her waist and looked into her eyes, saying, "Go, get some writing paper and write a reply to Aurora." "Okay," Beidou reluctantly moved his hand down. "My lovely little Aurora, as per your request, I have finished organizing the middle and high school tutorials and handed them over to Heidonking. Remember to allocate your time reasonably and don't tire yourself out. Your mother and I are proud to have you assigned to Ravenclaw, and we believe you have your own ideas. Don't be afraid that the money won't be enough. Haidong Qinghui will send it to Jinjialang on a regular basis. Spend what you need. I have asked Professor Dumbledore, and if you want to use the piano in Hogwarts Hall, you need to apply to Professor Flavia, the Dean of Ravenclaw. We're all fine. Your mother was afraid you would be wronged at school, so she beat up all those pure-blood wizards. If you lack any potion materials, you can ask Professor Snape in the potion class. I have already established a good economic deal with him. Your mother and I are proud of you, child. One more thing, make more friends." Chapter 9. Class time arrived. You are listening at novelfull.audio. There are still 5 hours left until the 2 magic potion classes in the morning. After Aurora tidied up herself, she placed the textbooks she needed on the table. I walked out of the dormitory carrying my violin bag and greeted the statue of Roina Ravenclaw before leaving the Ravenclaw lounge. At this point, most of the students in the school didn't get up, and the Aurora looked through the castle window towards the sky at 3 a.m. The light blue sky is clean without any impurities. At this time, the moon is not yet off work, and the silver-white moonlight shines in the air, giving people a dreamlike feeling. Aurora held on to the violin bag tightly and whispered, "Good morning, Hogwarts." Aurora walked up the stairs towards Hogwarts, and her destination was the tallest tower in Hogwarts. I don't know if it was because I greeted Ms. Ravenclaw this morning, but the stairs of the castle calmly and safely sent the Aurora up to the astronomical tower. This makes the Aurora a bit disheartened, and the patterns it takes time to understand are not useful. The astronomy tower is the place where Professor Sinister teaches astronomy classes. Students learn about stars and planets through telescopes, and this class usually takes place at midnight because it is the time when they can see the stars most clearly. Aurora looked at the metal planet models and exclaimed, "It's so beautiful." Then he took out his violin, and curiously, the word April was engraved on the side of the violin, which he didn't know what it meant. Aurora began her performance, and those beautiful notes flowed from the strings. The sound of the piano passed through the ever-changing stairs outside the door, through Ravenclaw's lounge, and into the sleeping lion pack. Following the stairs, it danced around the little snake and ran with the little badger. These lively notes lingered around the castle, sliding past the heart of the pajama old man. After playing a song, Aurora put down his violin and let out a sigh. Looking at the old man in pajamas, he said, "Good morning, Principal Dumbledore. You woke up so early." Dumbledore looked at her with a smile and said, "Aurora, this song sounds great. What's its name?" Aurora said, "You can call it Liue." This song was taught to me by my mothers. Liue, Dumbledore smiled, that's a great name. After praising Aurora's musical talent, Dumbledore puzzled and asked Aurora, "Oh, child, why do you have to get up so early to play the violin?" Aurora gently put the violin back into its bag and heard Dumbledore's question. She said, "Because of love." Aurora put on her piano case and looked at Dumbledore, saying, "I love music. When I play music, the notes jump around me. In my opinion, music portrays colorful stories." Dumbledore smiled as he looked at the nimble Aurora. Touching her head, she said, but our music genius Aurora has to go for breakfast now." Aurora was frightened by Dumbledore's words and immediately looked at the watch. The watch was customized by someone from the magical world who was searching for it. It shows that it is now 5 o'clock in the morning. Aurora looked helplessly at Dumbledore, who was smiling, and lowered his head to assure him, "I'll wake up a little later next time." When Aurora finished playing the violin, picked up the books needed for the potion class, and had breakfast in the lobby, it wasn't until 6 o'clock. While Aurora was thinking about what to do next, Hai Dongqing returned with a bunch of things. Some early rising eagles and badgers looked curiously at the pile of things on the Aurora table. Aurora touched Hai Dongqing's head with one hand and opened the mother's replies with the other. After reading, the corner of my mouth slightly curled up and I thought, the book has arrived, and now I can make use of my spare time. A little lion, who woke up early to study, ran over to Aurora and asked, "What is this? Is it a book?" "Aurora, do you have any information that you haven't bought, so ask your parents to send it over." Aurora looked at Hermione in machine gun form and rubbed her head, explaining, "This is the material we need to learn in middle and high school. I asked my mother to send it over. And there are also the songs I ordered, Singing Contraries and Today's Metamorphosis." "Speaking of Hermione, aren't you Gryffindor absent on Monday morning?" Aurora asked in response. "I'm already far behind," Hermione said to the Aurora, "I want to use my spare time to study." Hermione asked again, "Aurora, how did you know that Gryffindor didn't have classes on Monday? Do you have Gryffindor's schedule?" Aurora casually replied, "Of course not, this is just what I pushed out while looking at Ravenclaw's schedule." Hermione was so suppressed that she couldn't speak and could only mutter softly, "I was defeated here." Time flew by while chatting, and Aurora looked at her watch and said to Hermione, "I have to go to potion class. See you during lunch break." The potion class was held in a dungeon, which was much colder than the castle and Eyrie. The walls around are filled with glass bottles filled with various magical materials. Although I'm sorry to describe the professor this way, Professor Snape really looks like a bat. "He seems to have a problem with me," said Aurora after seeing Professor Snape. Professor Snape divided the students into two groups, and Aurora's teammate was Hannah Ebo from HECPAC. This lesson mainly focuses on learning how to mix several simple herbs to treat burns. Aurora noticed that Professor Snape's sinister gaze was always around him. Just as Hannah was so scared by Professor Snape's gaze that she almost poured the wrong potion, Aurora immediately took over the subsequent operation. Aurora detected that if Hannah really poured the wrong potion, Professor Snape would definitely rush over and deduct 10 points from HECPage and Ravenclaw. Fortunately, I have tried this small experiment Aurora many times at home, and practice makes perfect. In the end, Professor Snape looked at the perfect result of the Aurora group and gritted his teeth, saying to the Aurora, "Oh, look at how perfect the processing is. I believe you have done it many times at home." Later, reluctantly, he said, "Hesipakaravenkla each adds 1 point." After an hour, the Aurora and the others walked out of the dungeon. A group of eagles revolved around the Aurora. "Aurora, so powerful, truly worthy of being an Aurora, indeed, only the Aurora can receive points from Professor Snape's hands. The flower of Ravenclaw's high mountains truly lives up to its reputation." Hannah of Hufflepuff is also grateful for the help of the Aurora. When dealing with these eagles, Aurora seems to hear some toe-pinching nickname. "What are you all doing around here? Even monsters won't gather after class, Ravenclaw will lose 1 point. Aurora watched Professor Snape happily sprint up after deducting points. He shrugged at the eagles around him and said, "Look, even I can't take points from Professor Snape." At lunchtime, Hermione walked around Gryffindor's long table and sat down next to Aurora, saying, "Hey, Aurora, I think you must be missing a companion to learn knowledge with. I want to learn those middle and high school materials with you." She didn't return to Gryffindor satisfied until she watched the Aurora nod. Autumn next to the Aurora watched the proud lion leave and asked in surprise, "Has she always been speaking like this?" Aurora wiped her mouth and said, "There's no sense of distance, right? I can see that Hermione doesn't seem to know how to get along with others. So what she says will be a bit aggressive. This is just a form of self-deception." Autumn nodded thoughtfully. Aurora looked at Autumn and invited her, "Do you have any classes tonight? I want to go to the home elf kitchen for a walk. Cough, please help a few elves establish good social relationships with me." "Chio. You just said, crutch, dot." "Aurora. No. I'm not." Autumn glanced at the second-grade curriculum and said, "Sure, I don't have classes tonight. I'll go find you tonight. I'll go study the history of magic. See you tonight." Aurora picked up the book and planned to leave. "Wait." Autumn pulled the Aurora's hem and said, "I think you should bring an extra leisure book over. If I remember correctly, Professor Binns also taught the history of magic in first grade." Autumn looked at Aurora with a serious expression and said, "This is the only subject taught by ghosts. Professor Binns only reads the book, History of Magic, when giving lectures, which is extremely boring." Aurora nodded to indicate that she heard it, and then went back to take her history textbook from middle and high school. Since it's all history, it must be the same. It's truly you. As expected, as Autumn said, Professor Binns' lecture was directed towards a book, without any emotional ups and downs. Is this a ghost? The useless little insights of Aurora have increased again. There was also a small incident during the history of magic. Perhaps the praise of the Malfoy family by the first-year students in Slytherin increased Draco's aura. His deafening noise in the history of magic disturbed Aurora's studies. Aurora impatiently took out his wand and pointed it at Draco, saying, "Silencio," and silencing creatures. Looking at Draco's frightened gaze, Aurora kindly reminded him, "Don't worry, it will be ineffective after class." Then he turned to continue studying history. Draco wanted to use his wand to fight back before he could see the person clearly, and then he saw who cast the spell. Immediately remembered the fear of being dominated by demons. The surrounding Slytherin gradually quieted down with the fluent casting of the Aurora. After class, the people from Slytherin College immediately ran out of the classroom. Some Slytherin, who didn't know Aurora, wanted to give a presentation when a pure-blooded student pulled him back and explained to him, "Aurora North's mother is a member of the board of directors. Isn't she the mud seed of the Muggle family? Just remember, none of Slytherin's people will actively target her. This is an order issued by the elders of the family. I've been waiting for a long time, let's go." Autumn said to Aurora after waiting for a long time. "Well, let's go. I also invited a student from Hufflepuff to lead the way." "You say, is it possible that I also know the way?" Autumn was speechless. "Impossible," Aurora said without blushing or jumping. The home elf kitchen is located directly below the Hogwarts Hall, and can be reached by following the stairs leading to the basement of Hufflepuff. Hannah excitedly introduced the characteristics of the kitchen to the two eagles. That's right, Aurora invited Hannah Ebo, their good partner in the morning. The kitchen door is very hidden, but you just need to gently scratch a pear in the nearby fruit painting. Just like this, Hannah showed the two little eagles this special pear. I saw her gently scratch the pear, and it turned into a green doorknob after eating and laughing. After opening it, you can see the kitchen. The Aurora had a clear target and quickly walked in, asking, "Excuse me, do you have a manager here?" "Oh, dear little wizard, what is the manager?" An older elf bent down and said. "Well, it's the little elf in charge," Aurora said. "Duke is happy to serve the little wizards. Duke is in charge of the kitchen." Duke had already bent his waist to 90 degrees. Aurora is also aware of the problem of raising house elves. She dodged Duke's bow and said to him, "Hello, may I ask if I can work with you for a long time?" Aurora took out a long list of delicacies from all over China and desserts from various countries. "That's right, I'll pay you Jean Jello, and you just need to send some of the dishes and desserts on the list to the Ravenclaw lounge at the top of Hogwarts when I need them." Aurora finished speaking and buttoned her face uncomfortably. "Isn't it a bit difficult?" "No." Dork suddenly knelt down and cried loudly, "No, of course it can. Dork doesn't need to accept how to go on. This is what Dork should do." Duke held the order handed over by Aurora in both hands and shed tears again. "Duke will fulfill all the wishes of the little wizards. Duke can do it." Autumn couldn't sit still and quickly shouted, "Here and here, I want to be like the Aurora. We also need it." I saw people from Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw rushing into the kitchen. Originally, a little eagle in Ravenclaw thought it was going to fight when it saw the Aurora heading towards Hufflepuff. 1 to 10, 10 to 100. All the first-year students from Ravenclaw have arrived. And the people of Hufflepuff only came when they heard Dork's screams. They crowded outside the door to eavesdrop on the conversation between the Aurora and the elves. When you hear about delicious food, the elves can deliver it to the Ravenclaw lounge. All the eagles can't sit still. Who wouldn't want to have a delicious dessert in their spare time from studying? Duke cried even louder when he saw so many students enjoying the food made by elves. Aurora thought this should be tears of joy. After solving the small snack problem and the oolong incident during study, Aurora walked slowly back to their lounge with all the first-grade eagles. Chapter 10. Flight, forget it. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On Tuesday morning, there was a lesson in black magic defense with Slytherin, and a curse lesson with the Lions. To be honest, no one can tolerate the strong garlic smell on Professor Quirrell's body. Even Aurora wants to abandon its qualities and send a clear stream of water to Professor Quirrell. Curse class is the easiest time for Ravenclaw to earn extra points. After all, Professor Flavia is the Dean of Ravenclaw. Of course, this is also thanks to the Aurora, as long as you raise your hand faster than Hermione during the spell class. The first spell class came to an end in Professor Flavia's admiration for the Aurora's excellent completion of magical guidance. The transformation technique on Tuesday afternoon was the first time Aurora, except for Professor Snape, was penalized. The reason is that wearing cat mint and cat teaser sticks in class openly provoked the professor. The perpetrator said, "You really can't blame me. Who can refuse a kitten with eyeglass patterns?" Professor McGonagall hates and loves her at the same time. After all, not everyone can turn a match into a needle with a snowflake pattern on their first attempt at shape-shifting. Ravenclaw deducted 5 points, but due to Miss Aurora's outstanding completion of the task. Ravenclaw adds 10 points. Wednesday's herbal medicine class and astronomy professors also praised the Aurora's genius-like learning ability. However, Professor Sprout from the herbal class still told Aurora seriously that magical herbs need to be made into potions to be consumed. Some magical herbs do not have the function of direct consumption, and if combined casually, it may lead to death. Aurora could only nod regretfully upon hearing such serious consequences. Ravenclaw has no classes in the morning of first grade on Friday. During lunchtime, Aurora flipped through the song, singing the contrary tone, brought by Hai Dongqing on Thursday. At this moment, Hermione walked over with Harry and Ron. Hermione complained, "He seems to have never seen my hand." "No, I saw it when deducting Gryffindor points," Ron replied. Hermione exclaimed, "I actually deducted points for Gryffindor." After reading the magazine, Aurora curiously asked, "What? You too?" Cough, Professor Snape deducted points. Harry and Ron exchanged a glance and sighed together. "I feel like Professor Snape hates me," Harry said. "That's right, that big bat has been staring at Harry since class," Ron said. After Aurora understood the situation from each of them, he shrugged and said, "It's okay Harry, just preview the textbook next time. This simple question is not difficult." "Alright, it's almost time," Aurora looked at the time and said, "Harry, thank you very much for inviting me to Hagrid's for tea, but I have class this afternoon, so please excuse me for now." After the Aurora left, Ron withdrew his admiring gaze and picked up the big chicken leg on the table. He said vaguely, "Oh my goodness, Aurora North has such temperament." Hermione looked at Ron with disdain and said, "Humph, of course, unlike you, please be more polite when eating." At 3:30 p.m., the little eagle rushing over from the herbal medicine class met the little badgers walking by. They walked together towards the grassland outside the forbidden forest. 30 large brooms were neatly arranged on the ground. The professor of the flight class is Mrs. Huichi. She has short gray hair, yellow eyes, and is sharp like an eagle. The eagles and badgers were listening attentively to Mrs. Hodges' speech. After hearing Mrs. Hodges' command to pick up the broom, the students began to get excited one by one. But not everyone can succeed. Hannah Abbott's broom was already stuck to her palm when Hannah shouted for the first time. Other classmates can barely hold the broom in their hands over time. Only, Aurora, North. Mrs. Huichi shouted. "Don't resist it, children, go grab your broom." Madame Huichi looked at the Aurora and taught. Aurora looked at the broom on the ground and said to Mrs. Huichi in confusion, "I tried to accept it, but it seems to be very afraid of me, you see." Aurora crouched down and caressed the broom with her hand, only to see the broom she had touched begin to shake violently. Everyone stepped back. Mrs. Hodge shouted to the other students, protecting the nearest Aurora. The broom shook violently and slowly stopped, then the broom head pointed towards the Aurora, followed by a flash of white light. Bang! The broom of Aurora is exploding. It's exploding. Everyone looked at the dusty broom and then turned their heads to the seemingly calm Aurora. "Ah haha, this should be the problem with the broom. You can tell at a glance that this broom is old. It's definitely not Miss Aurora's problem." Mrs. Huichi was also dumbfounded. She took out another broom from the cabin and waved to the Aurora, saying, "Come on, kid, give it a try." Just as Aurora approached the newly taken-out broom, it directly repeated the operation of the sacrificed broom. Bang! Burst! Mrs. Huichi finally believed it now. "It's a problem with Aurora." Mrs. Huichi asked Aurora to sit on the grassy side and watch how the other students operated the flying broom. But what I didn't expect was that everyone's broom couldn't fly. Now, all the students are looking at the Aurora again. Aurora nodded clearly and voluntarily withdrew 30 meters from the practice area. "Okay, the little wizard's brooms can now rise a few feet high. Back to 100 meters, oh, the broom can fly even higher." When the Aurora returned, the brooms began to pretend to be dead again. "I think I should write a letter to Principal Dumbledore, my child," Mrs. Hodge said. "After class, child, you need to go to the medical room with me. Please step back a few feet now." Aurora sat 300 steps away from the training ground and whispered, "It seems that my flying broom also needs customization." After class, Aurora followed Mrs. Huichi to the medical room. "Oh dear, you're in good health and there's no problem. Mrs. Bobby Pomfrey is a school doctor at Hogwarts School. She said, it seems that this situation is related to magic. I suggest asking Principal Dumbledore." Mrs. Huichi pondered for a moment and said to the Aurora, "We need to test whether your type will have an effect on all brooms." After sacrificing a Gryffindor Quidditch team, Mrs. Hodge knew the answer. "Child, it seems that you won't be able to come out during the Quidditch match on the weekend. I will tell Principal Dumbledore about the situation, and he won't be able to do anything if I don't know. Madame Witchy said helplessly. I understand, thank you Professor. Aurora reluctantly accepted the fact that she was a broom killer.